Hey everyone, it's Jimmy from Internal here, and today I am going to show you how to use our dropdown component. So select the dropdown component, you can give it a name, and then you can enter in any placeholder text that you want, and then you can configure your dropdown options in one of two ways. The first way is to do so manually, leave this box checked, and simply input, for every item the display name that you want to use, as well as the value that you want to be passed when the user selects that display name. And for the sake of this demonstration, I am going to add an input component. And all this input component is going to do is it's going to display the value in this drop-down component. And so let's go ahead, quickly save this, and just to see how our drop-down is working so far. So now you can see that all the options I input are in there, and whenever I choose one of these options, you can see the value that is being passed. Now, let's say you have a lot of values and you don't necessarily want to manually input all of these for your drop-down. What you can do is select your options from a source. So in this case, let's use a function connected to our demo database, and let's list all of the company records. So that's a table that has the data that we want to use. And so you can see that data is listed in this table here, just so you can get an idea of what data we're using to reference. And here for our drop-down options, what we're going to do is we're going to choose the data that we pulled from our source, and we're going to say, hey, use the company name and use that to populate all of the display options for this drop-down. As for the values, we can do the same thing, insert a variable, choose this data coming from our drop-down. In this case, what we want it to do is pass the company ID. Note that if you want, you can also choose a default value to set this to, and that can also be a variable. But in this case, we're just going to save and publish. And you can see now that these are all of our company names that have been populated, and whenever you select one of these company names, the value that is passed or that is used matches up with the ID in this case. So now that you know how to set up a dropdown, let's take a look at the main ways dropdowns are used. One way is to use its value to filter multiple components. So in this case, selecting a company from our dropdown, you'll see that this filters the company table as well as the customer's card list to only show customers that work at this particular company. Another thing that you can do is use its value in another function. So for example, we have a button here that says update status, and by using this dropdown, we can have it update the status of that particular company. So let's take a look at how we configured this. So to have your dropdown filter multiple components, all you need to do is go to each component, go down to the filter in each one, and in this case, we want to filter the ID column and make it equal to our drop-down value. And you would do the same thing for the card list here. You would, in this case, select the company ID because that's what we're trying to match up, but also make it equal to the drop-down value. Now, if you want to configure your button or any other function to use the values from your dropdown, you can simply go over to the fields once you're configuring your button. In this case, we want to update the status field, and we want to use a value from our component. In this case, we want to use our second dropdown over here for the status and then choose the value. And that's it. Those are the basics of how to use a dropdown.